Hi, my name is Joshua Fredrikson, and I'll be presenting on the Tinker versus Des Moines case. So, for a basic overview of what happened during this case, it all started off by when a group of students wore black armbands to demonstrate against the Vietnam War. Ensuing this, the school district in Des Moines prohibited the wearing of armbands. And after the students wore armbands to school, they ended up being suspended, and the trial court ruled in favor of the school district. Basically, the trial court ruled that the school's ruling was reasonable in suspending the students. So then the students ended up appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court. As for the outcome of this case, the Supreme Court ruled in 1969. It ruled in favor of the students that wore the armbands. It stated that neither students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. They also ruled that it was protected under First Amendment, the wearing of armbands, and that also the court found no evidence that the armbands interfered with the school's work or with rights of other students to be secure or to be left alone. So this was big because they overturned the trial court's case because the U.S. Supreme Court thought that just the wearing of armbands was not enough to suspend them, and that it really didn't interfere with other students or the school's work by itself. So this case ended up being very important because it ended up establishing a precedent of protecting freedom of speech and expression as long as it does not interfere with schoolwork or infringe on others' rights. It was also important because it was ruled that this ruling was protected under the First Amendment, and it ended up also challenging the reasonable test. Additionally, the court clarified that any student conduct that materially disrupts classwork or involves substantial disorder or invasion of the rights of others is, of course, not immunized by the constitutional guarantee of freedom of speech. So basically, to sum this all up, this court case was very important because it ended up establishing a precedent and a basis for many other cases to come, as I'll get into later in the show or slideshow. It also is important because it overturned the trial court's ruling and ended up actually protecting students' freedom of speech and expression as long as basically that they are not infringing on other people or harming like the school's work itself or anything like that. So that was very important. As for other cases related to Tinker versus Des Moines, we have Moines versus Frederick, which took place in 2007. In this case, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the school had the right to restrict student speech that advocates illegal drug use. This relates to Tinker because, well, actually it's kind of opposite because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in this case that the school could limit the students' speech because it was advocating for legal drug use. So this relates back because, this student was advocating for something that could harm students in the school in general. So we can see how Tinker applies to this case. Also, additionally, another case I found related to Tinker was the Bethel School District number 403 versus Frazier, which took place in 1986. In this case, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that schools are able to punish/limit students for using offensively lewd and indecent speech in school-sponsored educational activities. So this kind of, you can relate it to Tinker because they ruled in this case that this school could limit the speech that was offensive to others, which you could cite that would infringe on others' rights and stuff, and indecent speech also was along with that too. So these two cases definitely are linked to Tinker in some ways. As for how we can apply these details to our future educational endeavors, I came up with three main reasons for applying them. First being that knowing what we as educators and a school district can and cannot restrict. This can be applied by like maybe in a classroom if a student chooses to say something. Now we'll have the knowledge to know as a teacher in a school district what we can and cannot restrict if it was infringing on others or harming the school's work in any sort of way. We'll just be knowing that and have the knowledge of that. Secondly, similar to the first one, be mindful of what students say and express and how it affects others in the school. So just goes along with the first one because it's just kind of being mindful and keeping a mental note of, as what the student is saying or expressing harming others or infringing on their rights, like the Tinker case ruled, or is it harming the school's general work? So just keeping a mental note of that. And lastly, to go along with that, we as educators should respect student speech and expression, but know when it's taken too far. So this kind of just wraps it all up. Knowing when a student is harming others, infringing on others, or using oppressive language towards them, just keeping a mental note of that. And kind of now since we have the knowledge of what the Tinker case ruled, we should respect student speech and expression, but know when to put a halt to it and know what we can limit as teachers in the school district. So lastly, for my discussion prompt for all of you, my question to all of you is, based on my information above, in what ways do you anticipate that the verdict in the case will affect or play a role in your future classroom as a teacher? So basically, in what ways do you think Tinker versus Des Moines is going to affect your classroom, and what role might it play in your future educational endeavors? And to conclude, these are my sources, and thank you for listening to my presentation.